Do you know why TV shows like The Office, Seinfeld, The Fresh Prince are so popular still to this day, years after they've gone off air? That's because they've had great stories. And I'm not talking about the episodes, I'm talking about the overall story of the show. They had great stories, and then they had great episodes to support them. Well, much like TV shows, fashion brands have to have great stories because if they don't, they'll only be as good as their last episode or their last season. So why is it important that you have a good story? What is your story? Let's discuss that next here on Making the Brand. What's up, everybody? I'm Rob Norman, and this is Making the Brand, the series where I talk about all the elements you need to start a good clothing line, and if you already have one, how to improve it. Before we get into things, please hit that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that notification bell just so you can stay in the loop of things. So when we drop new videos, you guys are aware of it. So why is it important that you have a story for your clothing line? Well, it's important because everybody likes a good story. I like a good story. But the key to having a good story is that with every good story, you get loyal followers. So think about the clothing you have in your closet. And what's the one brand that you have that you will always buy from? A lot of times we believe that we buy those items from those brands is because we like the stuff that they create. That is a part of it, but that's not the whole story behind it. We buy from these certain brands because we like the story that goes along with it. Subconsciously, we think about this. So you ever think about in your closet, there's that one piece that you bought and then you never wore it, and then you pull it out years later and you go, why did I buy this? You bought it because you were supportive of the brand and you were about that lifestyle of the story. And that's why you bought it, just out of support. No real other reason. You might have liked it at the moment, but let's be honest with ourselves. We don't like everything we buy, but we do buy certain things strictly because of the brand. So let's look at Nike. Nike as a brand has a story that if you are a Nike person and you always wear Nike stuff, you know in the back of your head, that story is about you. Whenever we put on a Nike outfit, if you put on leggings, a jacket, you feel you are part of that Nike life. You feel that you are super. You feel like you can just do it. You feel like you are above normal. You're almost superhuman in a sense when you're wearing Nike clothing, almost invincible. Well, that's the Nike story. They believe that you can become all this by wearing their stuff. Now, mind you, there are other brands out there you can wear. But why is it that you gravitate towards Nike? Because of the story. Now, when you put on a pair of Nike leggings, you can put on the same leggings that Nike has that Adidas has. But why is it that you buy Nike? It's because you buy into that story. The materials are the same. There's nothing different. Only the name on it. But it's the story that pushes the product more. And this is why you have to have a good story for your clothing line if you want it to sell. A good storyline will give you good customers and good followers. Loyal followers. And that's the difference. You want loyal followers. You just don't want, one person to buy your product and that's it. You want them to become a loyal customer. In order to have a loyal customer, they have to believe in what you're selling. So when you create a good story, people latch on to that. I've met many people over the years who started creating clothing lines, and I asked them, what is your story? And they'll tell me, well, I don't really have a story. I just want to create cool stuff. And that's fine. You can create cool stuff, but you can create cool stuff with a story behind it. If you create a clothing line, let's say a t-shirt, where you're just printing creative items on it. So your first shirt, you do something really creative and people like it and they'll buy it. But now you put out a second shirt, but there's no story behind it. You'll get some people who may be repeat buyers. You may get new ones. Some people may go, I'm not interested in that anymore. And they'll go on and find another brand that they can latch onto. But the moment you create a story for your clothing line, Now, those items will constantly sell because now people see the story, which is basically enveloping your entire clothing line. So no matter what they buy, they always feel like they are connected to you. So they will buy all the pieces. And this happens in other brands. So let's take, for example, Tom's Shoes. So Tom's Shoes was started in 2006. And what they did was they created a shoe, and their story was that for every pair of shoes that they sold, they would give one to a deserving person who was in need. Now that's their story. Their story was that they were basically creating a shoe and giving one to somebody. Now, people who gravitated to Tom's were people who are into giving, people who like to donate. People who believed in that were people who gravitated to Tom's Shoes. Now, Tom's Shoes was nothing great if you look at the design of it. It wasn't on a Nike level, it was nothing spectacular. But people bought into it because they liked the story. And those people who catered to that were people who were about giving. So again, you're looking at who are they attracting. Now, if you did Tom's Shoes and it didn't have a story to it and you just put it in the store, I guarantee you most people probably wouldn't buy it, and Tom's Shoes wouldn't probably be as big as it is today without a story. With a story, people have something to latch onto. People like to feel connected to something, and this is why story is important. So if you're going to create something, think about what your story is. Your story can be built around anything and everything. You can base it around an object. You can come up with a fake character and build an entire story around that. You can build your concept around a movement. If you wanted to say you wanted to start a women's skateboard clothing line, well, right there's your story, because there's not many female skateboard clothing companies out. So you already have a lane to build around, and you're going to get your followers because most female skaters are, buying items from other skate brands that are mostly male dominated and cater towards the male skate population. But if you create a woman's one, you have your story, and that's what you build off of. And that's what you need to do when you're doing any type of brand. So don't just think about this if you're doing footwear, if you're doing clothing, if you're doing jewelry. Have a story. Once people connect to the story, they feel connected to you and your product. And now they want to support you. And this is how you get loyal followers. With my brand, Planet Brooklyn Academy, my story was that I decided to connect my brand to the concept of an academic foundation. So I knew that I could have just did a Brooklyn clothing line, but what would be special in that? Anyone can create a Brooklyn t-shirt. So I had to think about what my story was going to be. And my story was to create this academic feel. Now, when I travel outside of New York or even leave the country, Brooklyn is recognized globally. Everybody around the world knows Brooklyn. Now, at times I run into people who know Brooklyn or are from Brooklyn. But when I do meet these people, there's a connection. It's almost like a fraternity. You're an alumni and you see someone else who went to the school you went to, there's a connection. And the same thing happens when I go to other countries or other states and I meet people who are from Brooklyn. So that concept was what filtered into what I started designing and came with that whole academic feel. So I said, let me build this whole Planet Brooklyn Academy. And now everything is tied back into this academic feel. So again, this is my story. Now, my story takes it another level down because now I also weave my story into my actual garments. So when I do my cut and sews, all our sizing labels, we do sizes from small to 2X. So inside my labels, the smalls will be labeled as freshmen, and our extra larges will be labeled as seniors, and our 2Xs are labeled as masters. So I have interwoven the whole concept of school into my size ranges. So now you can see that the whole concept is now part of my story, is the whole part of my clothing line. And people buy into that because now they know whatever I'm selling is going to have this kind of school atmosphere invoked it into it. And I do this as well with other aspects of the clothing line. I make sure that the hang tags, I put out t-shirts that are teaching you things. They don't just say Brooklyn all the time. There are specifics to it. Also, when you think about school, there's science. So we worked our trade number, which is, our team number, which is 9. I worked that into the whole story. So in science, we also know that there are 8 planets in our solar system. So Planet Brooklyn would be the 9th. So that's why 9 is our number. So again, I've sat down and worked my story into my actual line. So when people buy it, they feel like they are really buying a piece of my company, not just a t-shirt. And this is what you want people to do. You want people to buy into your story of your company, not just buy an item. Buy into the story, because when they buy into the story, they buy into you and they stay connected to you. All right, so that's it for today's lesson on, creating a story for your brand. If you have any questions, please, I advise you to leave your messages down in the comment section. I will be doing future videos where I'll just be answering your questions. So make sure you leave those comments down below. Until next time, guys, stay well. I'm Rob Norman, and this is Making the Brand. Peace.